Well, we're on the campaign trail now, and everybody says, Biden's hiding. Well, let me tell you something. We're doing very well. We're following the guidelines of the medical profession. We're following the guidelines of the experts, the Dr. Fauci's of the world. We're doing very well, and matter of fact, we're winning if you look at all the polling data.
Joe Biden from ABC earlier today pushing back on the critics who say his virtual campaign is not cutting it. He says he's anxious to get back on the trail, but that he's trying to set an example and follow the rules. I want to bring in Karl Rove. He is following the rules today in Austin, Texas. Karl, how you doing? And good day to you. What did you make of his appearance overall this morning on ABC?
Look, he's getting into, there are two ways to evaluate these. He's now getting into the process of running a virtual campaign. He sort of started off ragged, but he's getting better. And this morning was a more lively Biden than we've seen in some of these others. I think he does better when it's a back and forth between somebody whom he knows, as opposed to, speaking to a group or doing as he had this dreadful appearance that he had last week in a Zoom campaign rally. But it's better when he's going one-on-one, and we're likely to see more of this. The second part of that, though, is not process; it's the substance. And once again, I'm at a loss as to what the compelling message is from Joe Biden, other than "I'm not Donald Trump." Now, that may be enough, but I'm not certain yet that that is going to be sufficient.
Okay, let me come back.
Election.
Let me come back to that point. Here's what I'm trying to get my head around. What do these campaigns look like? In a country that's on partial lockdown at that point, I guess. We're talking July, August. I mean, have you been we had a Democratic congressman on here yesterday from Ohio, and I said, can you paint us a picture as to how these campaigns go? And he talked about podcasts, and I don't know. I just don't think you win the White House with a podcast. I mean, how do you see it shaping up for Trump and Biden as of today, then?
Well, it's got to be something different, because there are only so many times. I saw a Democratic consultant suggest that what Biden needed to do was to go on local news. Well, there's only so many times you can go on the local news in each one of these battleground cities in the battleground states. There's only so many times they're going to accept you for Good Morning America. It's not going to be every day. Now, their MSNBC will take him a lot of the time. But, in terms of getting a big audience, you got to find a way to break through. And that gets back to message. I think it's one thing to get control of sort of the process of a virtual campaign. It's another thing to have a message that drives that campaign. How's this going to look in July, August, or September? I have no idea.
Interesting.
All I know is it is not going to look like anything that we have had in recent years. We may be back to the point in the 1860s or the 1870s where the presidential candidate remained mobile, remained stationary, and people advocated for them around the country, and we heard from them through the modern equivalent of sending a letter to a prominent individual or having an article written in a newspaper or allowing somebody to interview. And that is to say, you appear on local TV, you appear on talk radio, you do a podcast, you appear on you create your own network on YouTube. And this is where Biden is at a disadvantage. He has 1/7 the Twitter followers and less than 1/7 the YouTube followers that Donald Trump has. Trump has spent years building this digital infrastructure. The gap is like this. Biden can spend a lot of resources and close that gap. I doubt he's going to be able to equal it or pass it.
Okay, numbers, RNC, DNC for April, RNC $61.7 million raised on the right, and Biden $60.5 million raised on the left. I know you dive deep into the dollar amounts here, but if the election is about the virus, who wins and how?
Well, the question is not going to be if it's about the virus. It's going to be about the handling of the virus and the handling of the economic aftermath. And it's not going to just, people are not going to blame Trump for the virus. They're going to judge President Trump on how he handles the virus. And similarly, they're not going to, in my opinion, this is an unusual election. They're not going to say, well, he was the guy who drove us into the recession. They're going to judge him on how is he getting us out of this economic difficulty. So there's a big onus on him. On the other hand, there's also an onus, I believe, at the end of the day, on Biden. Biden's got some weaknesses on handling the pandemic. That moment where he said that the ban was xenophobic, a travel ban on China was xenophobic and racist and fear-mongering, that's going to come back to bite him. So is the failure of the Obama administration to replenish the N95 masks when they had a similar draw on them during the Obama-Biden administration. But there's going to be a battle, I think, in the fall between what is the vision of each of these respective people as to how to get the economy going again? And how that plays out is going to be anybody's guess.
So
because
are you guessing then that the issue is the economy then, or is it U.S. versus China at that point?
Well,
and if that's the case, I mean, how does trade in China play in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania now?
Well, look, if the issue in this race is who's tougher on China, this is going to be a Trump victory. This is why I was mystified by Biden going after Trump in one of his ads, early ads, saying that Trump was weak on China. There's not a generalized sense among Americans that Trump is anything but strong on China, and there's some real vulnerabilities for Biden on that issue. But I think, look, it's going to be, elections tend to be about one thing, but sometimes they aren't. And this may be a time where it looks like it's two things, the economy and the coronavirus, but it may actually be about what do you stand for? What is your view? How do you what motivates you? What is it that you want to achieve? And are your values the same as me? Those things are always in an election, but we'll be paying attention to these two big issues. But how people respond, how the candidates respond by sharing who they are and what their vision and their values are is going to matter a lot.
Very interesting analysis. More to come on that. Thank you, Karl. He wrote the book on McKinley's convention in 1896. Don't think he doesn't know it. Nice to see you from Austin today. Thanks, Karl.